I'm going to present today or represent for you the event program and talk about the objectives. And then I will hand it over to our first speakers. So to remind you, we kind of have two major parts today that we're going to be presenting. So the first will be on micro-credential implementation, where you'll get some information on actual micro-credentials that have been put in place at Maynooth University. So we're very glad to have Dr. Susan Gettlerber and Dr. Ryan Malloy helping us today with this presentation. Dr. Gottleber is Associate Professor of Arts and Humanities and Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning. And Dr. Malloy is Associate Professor of Composition. So they have some really, really great information to share with us on micro-credentials. And so they'll be starting with us in just a moment. And we'll have a short break. And then after that, we'll show you some of the documents that Working Group 6 has already created for those that wish to move forward with micro-credential implementation. So we will show you more in depth, first of all, the framework and some background that's good to know about micro-credentials. And you'll also be shown the agreement and syllabus templates. And these are some of the important documents that are filled out for anyone who is wanting to put together a micro-credential. And you have our Working Group 6 colleagues who will be presenting the resources. So Lena Grudinke, Katerina Deman, Magna Alexandra Oliveira Pinera, and Maria Estela Oliveira Vieira. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced anyone's name. And at the very end, we'll have a short time for talking about, so for actually implementing micro-credentials, what you need to do and what are the next steps. And at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for discussion and Q&A. There will also be a little bit of time for Q&A in the first part of the presentation, so micro-credential implementation. If you have questions during the presentations, we invite you to put them into the chat and we'll look at them at the end. If there's nothing else on this, just to quickly remind you of the objectives of this event. So by the end of this session, you should be able to clearly define what micro-credentials are and their relevance in the European higher education area, understand the key steps and considerations in developing joint micro-credentials, gain insights on how to apply the documents we're going to show you today. And then finally, another element of this session is to help you foster collaborative relationships to help further develop these joint micro-credentials. So we'll discuss this more at the end, but there is, remember that we do have micro-credentials that have been already proposed that are still open for collaborating universities. At this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn the floor over to Susan and Ryan. Give me a moment to get this set up. Okay.
Okay, Jessica, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now I will brave the first challenge, trying to share my screen. See if this works. Great. Can I just check that everyone can see that?
Yes, everything's perfect.
Perfect, great. And you can hear me as well. That's great. Okay, so thank you very much to Jessica and Lena particularly for having us, for having myself and Ryan, and just to say thank you very much to Ryan as well to actually support Maynooth and kind of presenting on how Maynooth is approaching micro-credential implementation. So the way Ryan and I had it set up was that I was very much involved in kind of the administrative side of things on the university level, including academic program approval. And Ryan was involved in actually developing and leading a very successful micro-credential in music. So what we'll probably do is I'll present the overall framework, how Maynooth approaches it, what to watch out for, and so on. And Ryan then can say and tell us something how it looks in terms of the specifics. Okay, so just to, so I have this in the, okay, just to give you some background. So I think the national background is quite important actually. Ireland has the micro-creds project, and it really was awarded quite a bit of funding from different funding bodies, 2020-25. As far as I know, we actually have received an extension of the funding, although the funding will go down a little bit. And we have 7 participating members, so different universities around Ireland are participating in this. And as far as I am aware of, is Ireland is actually the first European country to establish a coherent national framework for quality assured and accredited micro-credentials. And we are fitting in with within the European context. So as you know, the micro-credentials intend to be flexible. So really, this is about to fit the way people work and learn. And I know there were some challenges also coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it actually is something that I think fits people overall. The quality assured, so they're accredited by the different universities. And one specific point that is, and I'll say something more about that in a sec, which is really, really important, that the majority of micro-credentials are enterprise-led. So we'll talk about the collaboration with the industry. And the reason for that is that they're really about meeting specific skill needs. So if one were to sum it up, you'd really say it is about upskilling, it is about reskilling, and it is about future-proofing. And actually one point that is for me personally very, very important, and I know it's important in the European context, it is about being inclusive. And I know it depends, what kind of national context we're working in Ireland. So I'm German, as you can hear. And for me, it was quite a shock coming to Ireland how expensive education can be. And then that is a problem for underrepresented groups, for groups who can't afford just kind of taking a year out coming to education. So this is really also about giving people the opportunity to participate in further education, upskilling, reskilling, even when they already have to work at the same time. So just going to give you some kind of basic figures, what is happening at Maynooth University. So we have currently circa 20 micro-credentials. The first ones were established in 2021. They are all credit-bearing, and what we have is normally between 5 and 10 credits. So a large number of the micro-credentials are 5 credits, some are 7.5, some are 10. Again, Maynooth is a fee-paying university, and so I talked to the admissions office. So the fees normally start at around €600 for 5 credits. It depends a little bit, and this is something Ryan might go into, because it really depends on the cohort that you're aiming at. So if you're aiming at a cohort where the department or company is willing to pay for it, that's one thing. If you're aiming at a cohort who are self-employed, for example, and want to upskill, and again, I think the music micro-credential is a good example for that, the fees have to be taken into account, namely, can interested participants actually afford this? The enrollment numbers and the success actually varies. So we cannot share the detailed figures on each of the micro-credentials, but in general, some, might have only 2, some have up to 30. Most of the micro-credentials actually have a minimum enrollment. So it's quite unusual that something that has only 2 participants would actually run. Okay. So not all run every year. Some are kind of building successively over the years. I think it's important for us to see that the overall enrollment across all the micro-credentials in Maynooth has actually increased. So obviously that came with the kind of micro-credentials that are being proposed at the university. Started around 90, and now we are overall at around almost 600. So that is quite successful for us. These are just some of the examples of the ones that we're currently having. So I work in philosophy, Justin. I think that's maybe an important one to notice insofar as when I hear something like industry-led, of course, for some of our subjects, I think we are asking ourselves, well, how can this actually work for a subject that's traditionally not very much involved with the industries. And there are opportunities around this, but it does need some rethinking of how we do things. But we have micro-credentials across all faculties. So Maynooth has 3 faculties: Faculty of Social Science, that includes business and law, the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, which is where Ryan and I are, and then we have the Faculty of Science and Engineering. And we have most of the micro-credentials sitting within a specific department. But there are micro-credentials that actually are being worked across departments. So it really, I think it is up to you how you're going to approach this. So for example, the last one that you see, that the writing for role-playing games is a micro-credential that sits within a unit that is not an academic unit per se, the critical skills, but they are the way it's advertised, because it needs in Maynooth to sit within an academic department. It sits within the Department of English. So different departments are contributing to this. So these are just some examples. I assume my point here is, depending on how academic colleagues want to approach this, not to be put off if you're like me in the humanities subjects and you're wondering maybe to begin with, is this something you want, you might not be able to do. There are opportunities, I think, for a large number of subjects, even if they don't come to mind straight away when we talk about industry-led. So the key features that we have for the ones in Maynooth. So the typical either level 8, so that's kind of Bachelor of Arts or higher diploma, or level 9 at the postgraduate diploma. So it can be either or. The delivery really varies. So I talked to different departments how they are delivering their micro-credentials, and we actually we have everything. So we have departments that deliver their full micro-credential on campus. Quite often these are summer schools, so they take place in July and August, because this is when we have rooms free. This is when people are available. We have micro-credentials that are fully online. And this is something I think that could be considered. I'll talk about that later on. It depends a little bit what kind of student markets you have in mind as well. What kind of delivery works for you. So if you have people who are participating from around the world, then an online micro-credential might be the one that works for you. I think it's very important that designing something for in-person, blended or online, the design is quite different. And that really needs to be taken into account. And we have blended programs, and that can be that it's partly kind of online delivery, and then for a certain short amount of time, the students come together on campus here in Maynooth. Now, a bit of a tricky thing, I suppose, that keeps sparking discussion at Maynooth, that they're currently not award yielding. So that means if the students participate successfully in a micro-credential, they get awarded a certificate, but they don't graduate from Maynooth University. So this is something I think to be taken into account. And also that the co-delivery with the industry, again, something I will come back to, that is a feature of most micro-credentials, but not all micro-credentials. So an example that we have is the School of Modern Languages has a number of micro-credentials on English for kind of teaching in the English language, or English for administrators. And that is delivered for partners, for partner universities. At the moment, this is actually only offered to Arqus universities, but I think there's the idea of opening it up. But clearly here, industry, it doesn't really work, because this is around universities working together. And a final point, which I know, again, I said to Ryan, I will say this a lot, and I will refer to Ryan because he has the practical experience with this. A number of the micro-credentials that we have in Maynooth, they are actually designed as a standalone programs, kind of modules in a way. But they can also be part of an existing program. Quite often, they would be part of a master's program that does already exist. So you have the idea with the micro-credentials, yes, they are kind of part of the lifelong learning, but they actually can be built into an already existing degree. And one of the things that we noticed when we have these modules that sit within an existing degree, that you actually have a really, really nice mix of students. So you have the students who are already working in a professional context, coming back to upskill, but you also have the students still doing the traditional taught postgrads or masters and so on. And the interaction between the students who already have this work experience and the students who just came through the university can be really, really beneficial. I think actually for the students from all cohorts. My personal experience with this is it's very beneficial for the students who haven't been out kind of in the industry for a while to hear about work experience, what to think about, what to watch out for, and so on. So I think it's really about, if you're thinking about designing a micro-credential, to take all these things into account. And you can see that the targeted students cohort are really, really a key feature what you need to think about. Okay. So this is our experience in a way. What is a design process for successful micro-credentials? So what does it look like? So really important for almost all of it. So I would take it as a starting point that there should be a co-creation with industry. And the way Menus has been using the funding, for example, is we bring in partners, representatives from the industries, having kind of a roundtable discussion. Again, this was really, really successful, I think, for the music micro-credential. And we hear from them directly, what is it that they actually need from us, right? So it ensures relevance, but actually what it also does, and this way it's really important actually to keep the contact with the industry partners up. It also helps spreading the promotion responsibility, the marketing responsibility. The companies quite often will have a bigger outreach, will be able to reach out to different cohorts than the universities alone. They know who to contact, and of course, the best ambassadors for the micro-credentials are people who then have already completed a micro-credential and go back and talk about their positive experience, and that then will bring more people in. It's really important to identify a clear market demand. And that really goes hand in hand also with identifying a unique selling point for your micro-credential. It really is very important to think about the offers that you're having. What would the students gain from that they would not get otherwise? And the two examples for this which come to mind straight away. One is if an industry partner identifies a skill that is mandatory for the employees to have, right? And then the micro-credential will provide this particular skill. The other one is also, and I never, in some ways I don't like it much when we think about education only in those terms, but it is an important aspect that the students coming into this, paying the money, as is the case in Ireland. I know this is not the case in all European partners, but also spend time on this. Need to think about it, what's in it for them. And if it's not mandatory, it could be something that could be really useful for the participants, for kind of promotion, success, kind of developing their career and so on. So I think this is a really, really important one. And the other one, which probably needs to be taken into account, to kind of think about, well, when you identify the clear market demand and the unique selling point, what do other universities do? And again, this depends. Ireland is quite small, so we can identify the competing universities, so to speak, relatively easily. But it doesn't make much sense to put something in that already 3 other universities are offering. Right? So really, it's quite important to identify a gap. Sometimes what's interesting, and this is a part of the experience that Maynooth University had, there is actually a quite clearly identified a demand from the employers But we also need to really think about are the learners actually interested in this? So we had a report saying the finance sector will need to recruit over the next, I think it was from 2004, 5 to 27, 6 to 9,000 additional people in a particular area. So the department developed a micro-credential on finance. So the market kind of need was clearly identified. It wasn't taken up at all by the learners. So it's quite an interesting learning curve to understand what actually happened there. So it's really important to hear both from the industry and the learners and trying to identify what's going on, but not to do something that already a number of other universities are doing. And obviously, it needs to be something that needs to be within the competency of the department. I'll come back to that when we talk about, thinking about costs, hidden costs, resourcing, and so on. And related, I think, to the co-creation with the industry is that, if possible, co-delivery with industry partners is really important. That again can take different shapes. It's again something that increases relevance and makes very clear that we are delivering what is actually needed by the particular areas. Okay. Another point, and that came up in previous discussions and kind of previous meetings as well, and discussions around the university. There is a possibility for those of us who are thinking due to resourcing, or you might want to have a nice mix of students in the class, to use existing postgraduate modules. That can be done. So people could think about, is there an existing module that can be repurposed? It's really important here to think about it, that it needs to meet the key criteria, right? So again, we're talking about demand-led co-creation with industry, demand-led in terms of what do the learners actually want. It makes sense to do it if you're thinking about maybe decreasing teaching load or keeping kind of an overall kind of overview that the workload is balanced. Also, the kind of hidden overhead costs that could creep up if you kind of introduce just an additional module. But I assume a bit of a warning shot here is to what sometimes happens is that people quite generically repackage something. And our experience is this kind of generic packaging really doesn't work. It needs to focus on very specific skills, and it needs to be very clear how these skills are going to be delivered. So we would say, even if you think of reusing an existing postgraduate module, it's very important in the redesign process to talk to the learners, talk to potential applicants, co-create with the industry, and still meet the criteria that we are saying are actually important for a successful micro-credential. For a lot of them, it is really about the real world relevance. And I've been involved in a number of kind of program design. I'll come on to that in a sec. And it's quite interesting that sometimes what we specifically as academic thinks, what is useful in the wider context, isn't actually seen like that from the other side, right? So it's really important to keep that kind of dialogue up. An important one as well, again, maybe even more important when you're like a fee-paying university like Maynooth, but probably in general, where possible, align with available funding possibilities. And I think part of the reason is, if you think about it, the European context really was about also increasing equity. It is about social justice. It is about giving people the opportunity to take up this kind of additional learning, which they mightn't be able to afford otherwise. And people taking time off work, whatever, as much as possible. I think it's really important to identify funding possibilities, and that can be, if you're working with government partners, that government departments would say, they pay for their employees to upskill. It could be working with the industry, that particular companies say they would actually contribute to people kind of taking this course, right? So I think this is something really, really important, literally from a social justice and equity perspective. Maybe some considerations where we are not quite yet where we should be either, I have to say. So Maynooth is in the process of constantly refining how we deal with micro-credentials. The policy that we have at the moment is that the micro-credentials are reviewed after 2 to 3 years. And that the idea is really to ensure, are they still relevant? Is the uptake still what was predicted? What it is. The couple of issues with that, because I think it's a really important one to do, to review these programs and maybe to build this in. But of course, in some ways, granting the credits is the same as granting credits for any other program. So ideally, it should be in line with kind of program review, whatever your university has in place. So Maynooth still needs to work a little bit along that. So that's something for you maybe to consider from the beginning. I would say bring the micro-credential as much in line as possible with policies for other programs. One of the great advantages of the micro-credentials actually is the idea of stackability. And Maynooth isn't quite there yet either. So this is something we're currently looking at. It does make a lot of sense to think about how to approach credit accumulation to facilitate the stacking of micro-credentials over a particular period of time. Again, in Ireland, a tricky thing is funding. So full-time degrees can be funded for some people, but these kind of offers are currently not. So we are looking around how to make kind of funding available to us. And that's particularly important with regard in Ireland, with regard to the scholarships that do exist for underrepresented groups who would need additional support to actually take up these opportunities. There is the idea at the moment being talked about that micro-credentials kind of form part of a larger degree, that maybe students could stack them up over time and achieve this kind of larger degree in the end. But again, a lot of students will only be able to take this up if there's some kind of relevant funding available. So I assume this is kind of saying, this is what we maybe should have kept an eye on more in the beginning. And this is what we're working on at the moment. So if you implement something, it probably does make sense as much as possible. Sometimes, we always would say to the students, do as I say, not do as we did. So really think about a little bit to avoid maybe some of these pitfalls in the beginning. One thing that I do think did work well for us in Maynooth, that the approval process, and this will depend on your university, the approval process is in line with any other program approval process. So in Maynooth, that is quite a lengthy one. So where it starts is you identify the market demands, recognize a lot of things for the micro-credentials, but they're kind of program demands overall. Really important to identify competing programs. I think that's specifically important on the national level. And again, maybe for Ireland, because we're a bit smaller, the competitors are quite close to us, and really concentrate on our strength. Costing. And costing needs to be honest, because a lot of the costs that come in as additional costs are actually hidden costs. If you're talking about having staff doing extra delivery hours, if you're bringing in external partners, how will they be paid, right? If there's a project in the micro-credential, who will supervise this? Who will mark this project? And our experience is quite often that departments would say, probably out of worry that a program isn't accepted, there are no additional costs. But if you look really closely at it, there will be additional costs involved. And that links very strongly in, I think, with the impact on the existing programs, both within the university, but also, within the delivering department. All the programs that come to the programs committee, which is the approval body in Maynooth, they are subject to external review. And this is really good. With the micro-credentials, you already have, industry partners. You have this designed really well. then it goes out to an external reviewer who have that outside perspective on it. So even if this is not part of your program approval process, I think this is something very, very beneficial because you just get that different perspective that we, from the inside perspective, wouldn't have. Again, currently ours are reviewed after 2 to 3 years. My suggestion would be to bring this in line with review processes of programs in general. Also, in terms of the market demand might change, the learners' needs might change. This is more true for some skills than for others. And it could mean, a micro-credential has kind of served its purpose after 5 years. Maybe it needs to be slightly shifted to keep being relevant. So some final thoughts, I think, for us to think about. If you think about planning your micro-credential, a good relationship with the industry partners is super, super important. I can't overemphasize this. And again, not just for the creation of it and for the setting up, but also for advertising. There's no better advertisement for a program or something like a module that people completed successfully. The impact that it had for their developing their own career, and then they talk to other people. So I would actually even broaden this out and to say, keep up a good relationships with your alumni and make it very present. Student feedback is really, really important for improving, for kind of checking what works and what didn't work. So the learners, I think they can give feedback in the beginning already to say this is what they would need from this. So I would actually even say bring in as much as possible potential candidates already in the original consultation process before setting it up. But also then the student feedback. So my experience quite often is, when you deliver something and you think it worked really well, and then the students say, for that and that reason, actually, that didn't work that well. Or it could be the other way around, kind of think, well, I didn't think that worked that well, but the students say, no, this was great. More of this. Right. So this can be done in different ways. Obviously, talking to the students, and normally the students are quite happy when they feel they're being heard. So in order to make student feedback successful, it's really important to give them the feeling they are actually empowered on improving something also for future student cohorts that come in. I think taking the market into account is important. So you need to think about, are you looking at the national market? Are you looking at the international? Are you looking at the mixture? And that will have impact on how you advertise, how you develop it, online, blended, and so on. And that's my final point on marketing. Relates a little bit to the student feedback, I think. When you think you're super, super clear about everything, there is no way that people misunderstand what you're doing. Be clearer. So it was very interesting. I talked to colleagues in the School of Modern Languages, Literatures and Cultures about their micro-credential. And they thought they were totally clear about what they were delivering. But then the student feedback was from a number of students when it ran for the first time, they actually thought it would be doing something else. And I think it's always the problem. It's clear to us because we've designed it. We know what it is. But if you're coming in from the outside, you mightn't look at a certain aspect or you might overlook something. So it's really important to make it as clear as possible. And this is just a final slide for that. So what the colleagues did in response to the student feedback on expectations, they developed actually an online brochure. So these are just some examples from the pages. Where they outlined the requirements really, really clearly, what it is, the learning outcomes, but also in terms of international students. So if you look at it, what are the required documents? What do you actually need to have? Let's say if it's an in-person on-campus delivery, what do you need to think about in order to actually be able to complete this? Most people, including myself, when I started here, you don't quite know where it is and how to get there. So it's really important, again, if you have international students, give all these practical information. It's really, really appreciated from students. Be very clear on the application process, how this works. It's quite confusing, specifically if you're coming in from a different system. And I really think kind of talking to different student cohorts is very helpful with that. Ask them, what do you need to know? What have we not thought of in order to advertisement? And for university, if you have a template then like this, that means not everyone in your university needs to redesign everything from scratch. but that's something that can be used. And it also is very nice because it shows coherence across your institution. I think that's it. I'm going to stop here, and hopefully that was okay. And I'll be happy to maybe after Ryan presented to take any questions. If I can't answer them, I can always go to someone who I think who might, and then I can get back to people as well. Thank you. So I'll stop sharing now. I hope. That's gone, is it?
It is gone. Thank you, Susie. It's over to me now.
Ryan, over to you. Everything I haven't said and more.
Okay, hopefully you can see my screen there now. I first of all want to say thanks to Jessica and Lena and Katarina for the invitation to be with you here today. We're terribly excited about micro-credentials in Maynooth, as you might have guessed from Susie's very detailed talk. And as a musician, we firmly believe in practice making perfect. So I'm going to largely repeat everything that Susie has said, and hopefully that will indeed make it perfect. So I have a couple of requests just in advance of starting. First of all, I hope you'll be very kind as to either raise your hand or stick something in the chat if you don't understand me. I come from a kind of a rural place in the north of Ireland, and sometimes I get told that my accent is impenetrable. But believe me, I'm really trying. So don't hesitate to kind of say, je ne comprends pas. And then secondly, if I appear a little distracted, it's because we have a large orange ball in the sky that we don't normally see here, and everyone is a bit excited. It doesn't appear normally for another 3 or 4 months. So Maynooth is quite a fantastic place to be at the moment. So as Susie mentioned, I am in the Department of Music here at Maynooth. I'm a composer and I'm a performer, and I teach on a range of modules across our music programs. We have a BA program and we have a BMUS program. So the BA program is a joint honours program. People will choose music and law, music and French, you name it. There are a range of combinations. And the BMUS program, the Bachelor of Music, is a music-only program. We're quite a large department. We have about 450 students across all those programs and our postgraduate programs. And it's the postgrad programs that I'm going to focus on today. So let me see, does this work? If I do this, it does. Fantastic. So where were we coming from and what did we do to end up with a micro-credential? So I need to tell you a little bit, first of all, about our master's programs. We had 6 taught master's programs that ranged from an MA in musicology to an MA in composition, MA in performance, an MA in creative music technologies, an MA in Irish traditional music, and an MSc in sound and music computing. So we had a real broad range of things that we did. However, our recruitment to these programs was not even. The arts and humanities is experiencing a crisis. I think it has been for quite some time, particularly in the area of postgraduate enrolment. And we found that these programs had very variable enrollments. So some of them were attracting low single figures, and others were kind of habitually getting into the kind of the early teens. This was not always sustainable. We have quite a large number of staff teaching across these programs, and we decided to jump before we were pushed, and combine our resources across the master's programs to create 2 broader programs that would mean a smaller workload for everyone, and basically to streamline our use of resources. In doing so as well, we took the opportunity to identify things that were common across those programs and to decide where we could maximize use of particular expertise within the department. And we found that we have a strong strand of public musicology, as it would be called. So where we're able to connect the academic pursuits of both historical and current musical study with public engagement, whether that's through journalism or broadcasting, or indeed through the practice-based work of our practitioners in the department, myself included. And because this particular area had wide appeal, it had wide appeal within our programs and outside our programs, we kind of thought, well, this is something that we should do across all our MAs. And this is the first point which duplicates something that Susie said earlier on. We decided to create this module regardless. It didn't matter to us that it was going to be a micro-credential. It was something that we were going to do that would sit across our MAs, and we would be delivering it year on year as long as we have students. But because of its appeal, we decided, well, this could possibly be opened out and made available to the public. And if there was interest, great. And if there wasn't interest, well, then we hadn't lost anything because we were doing it anyway. So one of the reasons we went down the micro-credential route was because it was going to be zero risk to us. We could only gain from it. And as Susie kind of said, because of the co-creation with industry aspect of micro-credentials, it was going to be of professional relevance then to our students, connecting them directly with employment, which is something I think that has historically not been well treated in the field of music. People tend to conceive of music graduates as performers, and they go to perform, and tend to forget that there is a huge range of transferable skills that can be learnt and applied across a broad range of employments throughout the arts spectrum, from broadcasting to journalism to arts administration and cognate fields, really. So that was our starting point. Let's create a module that looks outwards, faces industry, therefore maximizes the opportunities for our current students, allows us to continue certain engagements that we already had with industry in terms of bringing people in to work with students, and to do so in a way that was of zero risk to us, something we were going to do anyway, and we weren't going to lose out if it didn't work. So what was our process then? Well, in accordance with the guidelines that were given to us through the micro-credentials office, as it was here in Maynooth, we decided to engage with industry. And I should point out at this juncture, it was really important for us that there was some momentum in the university for micro-credentials. It wasn't something that we sought out. It was being presented to us as something we could do. And I suppose then anyone that was interested or saw the value in it could seek to apply for a micro-credential, but importantly, get the support in doing so. And that really helped us shape what turned out to be a very successful micro-credential. So through the funding that was available, we were able to bring in industry partners and get them around a table. And to be perfectly honest, Susie was the chair of that particular event. It was one of the best things I've ever done in this university, to actually have people that were not academics sitting around a table and throwing ideas out about what they would like to see in your graduates. And, then you could fight back. Well, we do this kind of thing, or what else do you need? And it was a real two-way process. We were able to show them how we were doing things already that they maybe weren't aware of. And likewise, we were able to learn maybe where we could be doing better in connecting the academy with employment. So we brought in a range of people from national organizations, from smaller organizations, but importantly, and making the link that Susie suggested earlier on with alumni, we tried to bring in as many alumni as possible, people who had gone on to have successful careers in the arts or in cognate fields, who understood where we were coming from, what we do, and who would have a kind of a more in-depth knowledge about our existing programs and the kinds of students that we get in, which is important. I'm just checking. I see. Oh, I have someone has sent me a chat. I will respond to that chat shortly. I just wanted to make sure that I was being understood there correctly. So we had a very fruitful discussion. We actually had two discussions. I'll talk about the second discussion in a while. And it gave us a very clear idea for what the course should contain. Importantly, we also asked the industry partners about how the course should be assessed. I mean, ordinarily, that's our purview as academics. You know, the industry people can stay out of that. But actually, their insights in how they felt students should be assessed were invaluable because it was starting to mirror activities that they would be actually undertaking in the real world. This is important because then when you go back to students to sell this idea, you're essentially selling them something that either they're already doing or that they will be doing in the kind of employment that they have. This is important as far as upskilling goes because we have attracted a range of students to this particular micro-credential. People who are already in arts administration, people who want to be in arts administration, and the engagement of those two types of people has been really pivotal in the success of the course. It's about creating networks, which I'll talk about shortly. So as well as engaging industry, we also had to engage our staff. This was fun because some staff weren't interested in this idea and other staff were really interested in this idea. Because of the MA restructuring, it was important that we had everyone on board. But additionally, because of the mode of delivery of the micro-credentials, we were asking big things of staff. We were asking them to work outside normal working hours. Of course, this is problematic when you're trying to maintain important, equality, diversion, and inclusivity issues. When people are trying to balance family lives with working lives, and it so happened that some of the people that were experts in the area that we were promoting on our staff were young mothers themselves, and this whole idea of working in the evening just precisely around a child's bedtime was not favorable. So we had to balance it. We had to balance it with the overall. We had to sell it in terms of an overall decrease in workload because we were rationalizing what we were doing. We're saying, okay, you're not going to have to do this one module, but if you do 3 lectures, for example, as part of this micro-credential, well, then it'll mean less work for you overall. I mean, you're sharing this with colleagues. So that took a bit of convincing, to be honest. And then we had to engage students. And actually, I might come back to that mode of delivery again shortly. But then we had to engage the students, and this was actually turned out to be quite easy. As I said, we had 2 cohorts here. We have existing MA students who would be taking this module anyway, and then trying to attract current undergraduate students who maybe weren't thinking of postgraduate study, but who wanted to keep their foot in the door or, try this out maybe in advance of doing an MA. And that has been relatively successful. But to be honest, most of the work was done for us by just identifying something that was of interest. And once we put it out to the wider arts world, there was a fantastic response and people just wanted to do it. So it may have been the right thing at the right time. We're also kind of drawing on parallel success we have an MA in creative writing at Maynooth as well, and it has been extraordinarily successful. There are lots of writers out there. It's accessible, and So we were kind of thinking, well, if they're doing so well, then maybe there could be a parallel audience for us in music. So what did work in as far as the micro-credential goes? Well, recruitment has been good. In the first year, we had 10 micro-credential students on top of 6 MA students. So that was a kind of a nice class of 16. This year, we have 20 on the micro-credential, which is our cap. And I think we have 4 MA students doing it as well. So the overall class size is 24, 25. The cap is something that we may wish to revisit. It has been important for us simply in terms of balancing the workload across the staff that are engaged in the module. We sold them this as being something that would eventually mean less work for them, but actually if they end up having 50 students, then suddenly it's not less work for them. So we don't want to be a victim of our own success in that regard. But actually the success of the program has meant that we can have more industry connections and bring more people in, which only serves to enrich the program altogether. So recruitment has been good, and hopefully that will continue next year. Only time will tell. Another thing that has been successful has been the online versus the in-person delivery aspect of the course. So when designing the course, again, this was one of the questions that we asked of our staff, and we asked industry partners what would work for them. As Susie pointed out, people who are upskilling in already employment might be able to do so within the context of their job, and therefore it could take place within the working day. But actually, we are targeting a much wider range of people, practicing artists who, may not be available during the day. They might be involved in workshop activities, or who otherwise may not have the flexibility within the working day to take time out to do this kind of thing. And one of the things that the micro-credentials team made clear was that they were really pushing the online delivery as an important aspect of a micro-credential, or what a micro-credential should be, purely from an accessibility point of view. It had to be available to people in their homes at their convenience. And we've worked around this a couple of different ways. Some people have chosen to record classes. Some people do the live classes. Some people record live classes, etc., etc. But what we find is that actually people are turning up. We do this on a Tuesday evening from 6 until 7:30. And that time is very specific because hopefully it's just before bedtime if anyone has kids to put to bed, but also it's just at the end of the working day. So if anyone needs to stay on at work, they can do that. And people are showing up on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock in their full complement almost always. And they are engaging with the class, which is great, unlike other experiences with online learning that we've had kind of during COVID and whatnot. So that's successful. Plus, I think we're talking to an engaged audience already, which helps. When designing the course, we also decided that we felt that the in-person component was really important, that we needed to actually maintain that contact, not just from a human perspective, but also because of the nature of what we're doing. We are talking essentially about a creative act, and with the best will in the world, the online environment can be quite sterile. So having people in a room and able to share ideas in that format was important. So we have 10 online sessions on Tuesday evenings, and then we have 2 longer weekend workshops that happen twice throughout the term. And these have been really successful because people start to know each other online, but they haven't maybe properly broken the ice. And then when they do meet 5 weeks into the course, it suddenly bursts into this kind of this vibrant sharing creative space. So we're really happy with that. Not only that, but it gives people a flavor of the university. If they're doing everything totally online, from home, they're not really going to get a sense of who we are here on campus. And we're also trying to maximize our recruitment for our MAs. So hopefully people that will do this micro-credential might consider doing an MA in the long run, which relates to the stackability thing that Susie mentioned earlier. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to plow on quite quickly. We have been successful in creating networks, not only between the students that are doing the course and the industry partners, but between students themselves. So, like, if we have MA students who are essentially academic students who are doing a course alongside someone who's working for Irish National Opera as a publicity assistant or something like that, they're making direct connections into industry via their fellow students, and that has been really helpful. And we've seen long-standing relationships being generated from last year's graduates into people that now are kind of continuing to do freelance work for these kinds of organizations. But this cross fertilization of networks has been really important between the academy and industry. And then what hasn't been successful? Well, a couple of things haven't worked so good, and we're still trying to work these out, as Susie has mentioned. One is the disparity in fees. So one of the things that emerged from our discussions with the industry panel was that the fee that we should be charging for such a micro-credential, which would have been around the region of €800 for this 12-week course, was simply not going to be an option for a lot of artists. They weren't going to be able to afford that. It just was a no. And we looked at the possibility of whether industry might be able to support this, but there's still a little bit of a standoff between arts organizations and this suspicion that they have of academia, which we're trying to work around. But we managed to make an agreement with the university that we could charge a much smaller fee. For the first year of the program, it was €480, which was, so you're talking just slightly over half the fee that it should be, and that this would be more attractive then to students. We asked industry directly what they thought this would be worth, and they were all actually coming in a little under that figure. So we went somewhere in the middle, and it seems to have worked. It does cause an issue down the line, however, if someone decides to do their MA, and they will essentially end up paying less fees because they have done the micro-credential was cost less than someone that's doing the MA course. So we have a subtle difference between what the MA students do and what the micro-credential people do that kind of gets us around that hurdle. Another thing that hasn't been successful, it hasn't been an issue at the moment, but it may become an issue, is the precarity of part-time staff. So we're bringing in industry partners who are very happy to engage with us. We don't always know if we will have those relationships. It may be that some of them may not be available. We also come up against an intriguing contractual issue that if they have been doing the same kind of work for more than 3 years, then they are entitled to some contractual status, which is something that the university is wary of, naturally. And that's something that we will have to examine down the line. As I say, it hasn't been an issue so far, but it's in the back of our minds. And then lastly, one of the other unsuccessful things, it relates to a micro-credential that never happened. So we had an idea for 2 micro-credentials when we started out. There was this one, which worked, and there was another one, which was going to be essentially community music based, because we identified a gap in the market where there are a lot of music educators who are freelancers who do not have the training to deal with a range of educational needs in a classroom setting. There's a specific organisation in Ireland called Music Generation. It was set up by U2, who you may have heard of, and they pumped a lot of money into kind of getting music into schools and community settings. But what we're finding is that with the increased identification of needs in primary school and secondary school settings, that music educators don't have those skills. They haven't done education degrees. They don't have the wherewithal to deal with the range of needs from, autism, dyslexia, you name it. So we were like, well, we can help with that. We can definitely kind of create a small program that will help give them practical scenarios to deal with these things. And again, we had an industry panel who were very supportive of what we were doing. And we come up with a kind of a clear plan. But it hit a wall in that we couldn't do it ourselves. We just didn't have enough in-house expertise to actually make it happen. So we were kind of thinking beyond our means, really. It still remains something that we want to explore, but it brought it back home, for us at least in the music department, that any such endeavor has to start from within and using what we already have. For us, that's using our existing modules and taking them to a micro-credential level. We have several other ones which we've identified, but we have resistance from staff. For example, we have a couple of really good music technology modules that we know for a fact would sell like hotcakes in Asia and in the subcontinent in sound and music computing. And the particular colleague in question is not keen to do it precisely because he thinks it would be too successful. He thinks he would have too many students, and he prefers to have them on campus here doing the MA. He already runs a successful MA, so I suppose he doesn't see the need to actually to do this. But I'm like, would you not consider doing it, because it would bring in resources that we could use to do these other things? But anyway, for the moment, it's a no. And just lastly, on that point, the international recruitment is a challenge for us as well, because we can't technically accept non-EU students because they don't have visa rights in Ireland. They don't have right of residence. And even though if they were only coming here for like a weekend workshop or something like that, there are obviously logistical issues that might make that not viable. But purely from an immigration perspective, they can't come. So we would have to conceive of a different mode of delivery for those international students as well. But that's something that might be worth thinking about in the longer term. Anyhow, I have kept you longer than was promised, and I apologize for that. I'm going to blame the sun. It's put me in a good mood. But I think we do have the possibility of some questions and answers, but I'm going to hand over to Jessica now and let her decide whether we live or die on this. So.
It's a lot of responsibility. Thank you very much, Ryan and Susan. This was really, really informative, and you gave us a lot of really great concrete examples. So I think what we'll do is we'll try to keep it to 3 questions max. There is a question already in the chat, so I would say it would be a good place to start. I don't know if you can see that. It looks like it's especially for you, Ryan, on if you recommend a blend of in-person and online formats.
Yeah, so the blended format has worked for us. I suppose that would be very dependent on the industry that you're targeting. And what works for us may not work for the chemistry department, for example. But for the kind of work that we have been doing, where this kind of person-to-person engagement has been, we're not simply in the business of content delivery. We're trying to nurture a set of skills that maybe people already possess in some form, but they're wanting to develop. And in our case, those are very specifically creative skills, but creative skills which are embedded in a professional environment. We need that kind of interaction. So the blended option has worked for us. The online delivery has worked perfectly well for getting that information out. But then, so for example, to give you a little kind of taster of the structure of the course, we have a couple of opening sessions where we kind of just contextualize what we mean by writing about music, because writing about music sounds like something somebody would do in elementary school, but really it's actually a really broad area that covers writing about music in funding applications, writing about music for a broadcast script that's going out on the radio, writing about music in a music journal, in a you name it. There's a broad range of circumstances. for a composer, writing my biography, which is shocking. I hate writing biographies, but I have to learn how to do these things, writing program notes, etc., etc. So we contextualize the course and what students can expect to get out of it. Then in weeks 3, 4, we have an external facilitator. His name is Toner Quinn. He's the editor of an organization called the Journal of Music. Here, it's an online. It used to be a paper-based publication, but it's now an online magazine about music and artistic activities in Ireland. It's been really successful, and it has a huge it has huge traction. And us having Toner able to speak on the course is really important. That's an important selling point for us. So Toner does some kind of general editory kind of stuff with them in those 2 weeks, and then Toner facilitates the on-campus workshop. So they are working material in weeks 3 and 4, and then they get to meet Toner in week 5 in person. And just that mixture has been really successful. That, like, in terms of the feedback from students, they say that has been, the flexibility to do it online, but then also to get that in-person aspect has been really important. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer. Go blended.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. Thank you for that answer. Other questions?
I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, but just to say that I'll be happy to receive an email from anyone if they do have questions. I don't wish to speak for Susie, but I've put her email up there too. So she's complicitly agreed.
Sorry, there is a hand of Lina.
Yeah, so I have one question if nobody else has the questions. I don't know if it's for Ryan or for Susan, but Susan was speaking more about the details and taking more background information. So what kind of micro-credentials do you have more in Minut, the national ones or international ones? And also, are there more of those which are taught online or the face-to-face ones?
Oh, that's probably more for me, isn't it, Ryan, than for you? I'm thinking. That is a good question. I think in general more the national. At least that's at the moment. Now the other one, I would need to open the document if it's more. What was it? If it's more online in person, wasn't it, Lina? Was that your question there? I think it's more online. Just let me have a quick look there. Okay, it doesn't see here. I think it's a good mix. I think it's a good mix. I mean, kind of from actually not only even just online or in person, but I think a lot of people are doing blended. And that is the idea. I think what Ryan was saying, we really shouldn't underestimate the importance of people actually getting together. And what happens then, the language ones that we have are on campus. But that is a very specific one for the language one. So yeah, I think, Brian, my feeling of your suggestion in general, a blended is probably a good idea, is my feeling too. So it depends if you are targeting international and you would have visa issues and so on, then the online, of course, is a perfect valuable point. I can follow up in more detail if you like, but so that's my feeling about this. But I think at the moment, Ryan, no, also it's more national, isn't it?
Yeah, it's predominantly national, and I mean, the push. One of the main pushes was for online delivery. Whenever the micro-credentials office were kind of saying this is the way to go. I know that within the university there are really mixed feelings about the whole online delivery. Some people are totally against it. Some people absolutely love it. I think all of us obviously have had to engage with it in some way because of the pandemic. And so that resistance has probably spilled over into this area where you get people that don't want to do the online delivery because they feel allergic to it. But really, for the micro-credentials to work, in essence, it should be an online delivery. But having the mixture is ideal, because then you get the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah. I think kind of coming in on that again, was I think there's also a difference if you have the online kind of live classes, which is kind of, I think, what you're doing in parts, or the recordings. Now, this is just a teaching experience from myself, so I don't know, Ryan, if you can kind of, say something about that. Or what I found actually, and this was a recent learning experience for me, if you do recordings as part of it, which I think makes sense because it does allow people to do kind of the work in their own time. And specifically, if you think about people with caring responsibilities who are working full time, they may actually need to do this at a time, whenever in the evening. I found it's quite helpful if you add an interactive component. So something where, it's not just about the listening, but responding in some ways. And that gives also a feeling, could be a Padlet or whatever. That also gives a feeling for the class. Where are they? What have they actually understood, and so on. So rather than just presenting them with recordings, I do think it's important to have some kind of interaction that built in, but it could be asynchronous. And then you come back to it at the next time and talk about it. Ryan, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, well, actually, I was just taking a quick look at our analytics for the current Writing About Music module, because we do, it's a live class online, it's recorded, and the stream is made available. But actually, the number of clicks on the streams are minimal. So, I'm looking through here, there's 1, 2, and that's out of 20 students. And it might be a student that has just gone back to verify something that they didn't hear in the class, or whatever. So I don't think the streams are being accessed as in the way that we're offering them, which is an alternative if you can't be there live. People are attending live and are engaging. I suppose, again, if you're engaging already engaged people because they're working in this area, they're going to want to show up. So I think it's about identifying that strong USP of your micro-credential and getting that message out, and people will show up, I suppose.
Okay. I think for time's sake, we're going to finish this section here. Thank you, Ryan and Susan. You shared your email addresses, and we're also available if there are other questions or things that come up for people, definitely. So we still want to encourage your questions. So I think we're going to take our break now, and we'll say we will come back at, in Central European time, it will be 2:25, and so that'd be 1:25 for those of you in Ireland and Portugal, and 3:25 for those of you in Vilnius, and I hope I didn't miss anybody there. Okay, and it looks like there were a couple other. Okay, there's an additional question that's maybe something we can see coming back from the break. So see everybody in about.
Yes. So hello everybody. I hope you can see me well and you can see my screen now. So I will just move to another part of our presentation. Yeah, so basically this would be the document, and I will start with the framework for jointly prepared micro-credentials, and then my colleagues will continue with the agreement template and the syllabus we prepared in Arqus Alliance. So to begin with the framework for jointly prepared micro-credentials, of course, the key thing is that this framework is prepared for the Arqus Alliance. We try to be very light here and not to prepare a very strict document. I shared this document a couple of days ago with you just to check and to familiarize yourself. But the aim of this framework is to create joint micro-credentials within the Arqus Alliance for the degree and certificate programs, also for the lifelong learning programs such as short learning programs and so on, and of course for the courses. Also to enhance flexible and learner-centered educational opportunities. So it's like the experimental approach in the Alliance to issuing the micro-credentials. Just to move forward, of course, we have one very one European document which is already approved regarding the micro-credentials. It's a European approach to the micro-credentials, and it was approved in June 16 a couple of years ago. There were the recommendations that were approved by the European Commission. And after that, as you know, and as you heard from the colleagues from Minut, of course, not all the countries implemented that document, and not all the countries have the regulations related with the micro-credentials, unfortunately. That document states that definition of the micro-credentials, the micro-credentials are considered as the record of the learning outcomes that the learner has acquired following the small volume of learning. And basically, micro-credentials, according to that document, are owned by the learners. They are shareable and portable, and they can be standalone or combined, and are underpinned by the quality assurance. So we checked the document, and then we decided to move forward with the Arqus definition that would be suitable for our alliance. Of course, we checked many other documents that were prepared nationally, especially considering the ones that were prepared by Minut University as well. They are the primary ones who have micro-credentials implemented. So the joint micro-credential within the alliance is defined as aligned with the QF levels from 6 to 8, depending on the complexity and the depth of the learning outcomes, of course. And the volume can range here from 1 to 59 SCTS, because under the different European documents, you can find that, well, the volume can be very different, and we decided not to be strict here. So the micro-credentials are collaboratively developed and implemented by at least 2 alliance universities, as we are considering Arqus here. And of course, as it was mentioned by the colleagues from Minut, it's very important, and they might also involve partnership from the external stakeholders such as industry, labor market, NGOs, and non-Arqus universities as well. And of course, the micro-credential in Arqus can be coordinated by a provider appointed through a mutual agreement, which must be signed prior to the start of the micro-credential. It's extremely important for us, well, to have this agreement, to have agreement between partner universities, or especially when we are talking about the external stakeholders involved. So what does it mean, and what can be considered as micro-credential? Not to be very specific, and also to provide you with some examples, there are few probably the key categories that could be considered for micro-credentials. The first one is the academic programs and courses, of course. So summer and winter schools, short courses, blended intensive programs, Erasmus short-term mobility programs, in case they are including assessment and certification, internships with the learning components, if they are assessed and certified, can be considered as the micro-credentials. Also, university courses and modules, such as standalone university courses, which are shorter than full degrees. Also, the minor or elective courses, if they are separately certified, could be considered as the micro-credentials. The same example is the one that mentioned by the colleagues from Minut, and that's why I asked before. The online courses and MOOCs, they can be considered as micro-credentials too. As well, there are a few categories that are not so relevant in our case, such as professional and industry certification. For example, IT and technology certifications, they could be considered as micro-credentials, such as Google, Microsoft, and so on. Also, language proficiency tests, such as IELTS, TOEFL, and so on. They could be considered as micro-credentials if they are providing the certificates. Also, vocational educational training courses and even boot camps could be considered as micro-credentials under the different documents. But as I said, for the Alliance, these are not so relevant categories. And the last category that could be probably relevant for us is the government and NGO programs, such as military and defense training courses, lifelong learning courses, and short learning programs, which are non-degree awarding then. Yeah. So I saw that somebody was painting something on my screen. I don't know how did it happen. Okay, so just to move forward with the joint micro-credentials development, so we provided the process that is completely for the Arqus Alliance and is related with the development. As Susan mentioned before, the process is pretty similar to the regular study programs process because we wanted to be very light here and not to give you the strict rules. So there are 4 stages, basically: initiation, coordination, approval, and implementation in Arqus Alliance. So for the initiation, of course, any partner university can initiate the preparation, needing at least one other partner. Then the coordination part, where a coordinating provider must be appointed to prepare the micro-credential descriptor, the syllabus, and the agreement. But of course, the coordination means that, well, the coordinator is only responsible to coordinate the process, not to prepare all the documents by himself. Then the approval part, where the syllabuses and agreements must be approved by internal management and signed by the heads of each provider. But that does not mean that the agreement should be signed at the rector's level. For example, if you agree that, well, the faculty level is fine between 2 universities, it's still possible. And then implementation part, where micro-credentials are uploaded into the Arqus Learning Management System and the course catalog or lifelong learning catalog, and they are advertised for students for the selection and so on. Certificates are issued on behalf of the Alliance, and the coordinating provider organizes then the certification. Yeah, and just to move forward, of course, in the framework, we described the agreement and the fee policy a little bit. So basically, for the agreement part, we just described that agreement must be, the micro-credential implementation must be confirmed by signing the agreement between the providers. Of course, it should define learner selection and admission processes, their coordination, administration fees, as well as outline the provision for quality assurance, data protection, and intellectual property policies. As I said, it doesn't mean that it should be mandatory signed by the rector's office. It can be signed by 2 faculties as well. And regarding the tuition fees policy, so the tuition fees mutually agreed upon the providers delivering that micro-credential and described in the micro-credential implementation agreement. So that means that, well, 2 partners are basically responsible to decide what fee they are taking from the students. As you saw that, for example, in MENU, the fee might be 600 euros or 500 euros for 5 ECTS micro-credential. In Padua, I think they are taking around 300 euros and so on. So it's a mutual decision between 2 partners here. And of course, the fee might be reduced for those students, if the micro-credential part is a part of the regular study program. So for example, if the micro-credential is included into the regular study program, of course, the fee might be reduced for those students and they could take that micro-credential course for free. Then probably the very last part of the framework, which is important here, was related with the administration, certification, and quality assurance of the micro-credentials. So just very briefly to mention that the coordinating provider is responsible to manage all the administration related to the students and learners, of course, because as the coordinator, but it never says that the coordinator cannot change. So basically the coordinator can change in a mutual agreement between the partners. So 1 year, for example, I don't know, Vilnius could coordinate the micro-credential. Next year, maybe it could be Padua and so forth. After completion of the micro-credential, digital certificate should be issued for the learners or for the students, including necessary metadata and unique identifier. In Arqus, the IT platform is planned for certification for the autumn 2025 already. So this autumn, we should have the certification platform already starting, and starting from the autumn semester, we should be ready to issue certificates for the micro-credentials. The next thing is that all micro-credentials that are prepared within the Alliance should be publicly available, of course, in the course catalog, as I mentioned before, or in the lifelong learning catalog, depending on their nature. And the catalogs, well, they are already developed. So once the micro-credentials will appear, they can be published, and they can be open for students to select and register them for the autumn semester already. And last but not least, at the Alliance level, prepared micro-credentials should meet the established standards for the excellence and quality characteristics provided in the internal quality assurance system for the Alliance. Well, basically, the draft version of the system is already under the preparation, and we should have it soon. But it was promised that the system will align with all the internal regulations of each partner, so no additional Arqus requirements should appear. Of course, as the colleagues mentioned in their presentations, the review is the subject of this quality assurance policy, but well, basically the review process shouldn't be no different that we already have internally in our university. So basically that would be it regarding the framework. As I said, it's a document that is prepared to be a very light version just for us to know how to start with the preparation of the micro-credentials and how to use other documents we prepared. And of course, to rely more on the internal rules, what we already have in each partner university. So moving forward, there's another part related with the micro-credential agreement template. I will just give the word to my colleague, so please continue.
Thank you, Lina, for giving me the floor. I will now present our agreement to you, which is basically a template for setting up jointly prepared micro-credentials within Arqus Alliance. The document is a form with the most important elements for the future collaboration between the universities. It is a draft that can be adapted and customized to suit the individual needs and features of the collaboration. Therefore, please take the time to check all the points and elements carefully in advance. Elements can afterwards also be added if necessary. I will now briefly discuss the chapters of the document. Lina already mentioned some points of it, but I will go through it. Maybe you can go to the next slide, Lina. Thank you. Now you can see here the table of contents, and I will go through it quickly. The objective of the agreement. The agreement is signed by the participating institutions to define the requirements and obligations for the implementation of the micro-credential, with one university as a coordinating institution. The key data of the micro-credential. In this section, includes information such as the ECDS credits, the language of instruction, the delivery mode, the time frames, the frequency of delivery, and the minimum and maximum number of learners. And it also outlines the fee structure for the micro-credential. The next chapter, description and course structure, provides a brief description of the micro-credential, its learning outcomes, which is very important, the course structure, and whether it's part of a regular program in any of the universities. Learner selection and admission outlines the criteria for learners to enroll in the micro-credential and the process for the selection and admission. Fee policy. Here you get details about the fee agreement, including potential reductions for students of partner universities and the whole payment process. The next one, administration and certification, covers the administration of learners, the issuing of certificates, and the data evaluation process. Quality assurance and data protection describes the implementation of local evaluation and feedback systems and data protection in accordance with relevant regulations. Intellectual property acknowledges the ownerships of the intellectual property rights and outlines the agreement's implications on these rights. The duration of the agreement states the start date of the agreement, how long it is valid for, and the conditions for ending it, and responsibilities after ending it. Amendments and conflict resolution describes how to ask for changes to the agreement and how to solve disagreements. Last but not least, force majeure deals with the situations that the universities can't control, which might have impact how the agreement works. Now I have already finished for now. It sounded very much, but I assure you the whole agreement has only 4 pages. And you can always ask your local micro-credential coordinator for support and help. You're very warmly welcome to do that. And now I pass back to my colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, so Magda and Estela, I don't know who will start from both of you. So the syllabus template and the floor is yours.
Good morning. Me and Stella, we are presenting the Arqus micro-credential syllabus. Stella?
Hello, thank you for having me. And this is a form which we've thought that would be sufficient for you to, proponents of micro-credentials to fill in. So we thought that besides the proponents, the universities prepared in the micro-credential, and they have to abide by the rules of the Arqus Alliance. They also have to have in mind the rules of their own universities. So as Katarina said regarding the agreement, it qualifies here as well. So all the internal process of implementing a micro-credential, so it has both Alliance requirements, but also universities requirements. So you would start by having a title for the micro-credential and establish the number of students that you want to have in your classrooms. Then you have there is each micro-credential should have a coordinating institution, a coordinator, a leading professor, and list the other co-responsible people. You can, the slide.
Okay.
Okay, so then you would have to establish the level of qualification, depending on the level of the students that are taking the course, enrolling the course. You'd have to define, establish if it is in online, if it is both, if it is if it is presential, then the language of instruction, and also establish the timeline of the course. We've been through this already, so it can have from 2 weeks to 12 weeks, or semester based or annual based. That depends on the number of ECTS that you're going to assign to the micro-credential, of course. So the workload as a weight in this regard. It is also important that, having in mind the workload and the demands of the micro-credential, you establish if you want the student to have a previous background, that is what prerequisites. Again, you have, as mentioned before, the number of ECTSs is very important, and when you come to the ECTSs, it works as in the other course units, where you establish the workload of the student, the contact hours, but also the individual work they have to they don't have to comply with. Next slide, please. Objectives must be defined. Also, of course, it is important to remember that there is a principle. It is a joint micro-credential. So we do need to make sure that jointness is really an issue here. You prepare the joint micro-credential should be prepared with both or all the universities that are involved in devising this project. So it is a joint project, not individual or not per university, and that someone else joins, because then we might have problems in the implementation if the preparation of the micro-credential has not been done adequately. So again, the contents, of course, the summaries of the summary of the micro-credential. Then you would have also to establish, to define the learning or the competences, the skills the students should have at the end of the program. You must define the teaching and learning methods as well as the assessments. Everything, again, jointly. We made sure that we wrote jointly everywhere that to highlight the importance of doing things jointly. Next slide, please. Okay, here, considering the type of course that you have, this table, you'd have to write the number of modules or that you consider that you need to give the whole micro-credential, then the contact hours, and then you'd have also to define if it is lectures, if it is theoretical or practical, if it is just practical, you see those. So you have a legend and you can establish that. So you have for taught in person and for a learning component as well. So everything should be established in order to make sure that the number of ECTSs are sufficiently explained. Next. Finally, the assessment. Assessment must be also determined since the beginning. The weight of theoretical work or practical work, the deadline, and what you consider that is important for the student to the deliverables that you deem important for the student to provide you with. And finally, the references, the materials, the working materials that you need to share with the students for them to prepare the micro-credential. So I guess that that this is just an exercise that we came up to, and now we need. If you have questions, please just feel free to ask. Making sure, please, it is important that you know that these we are still. This syllabus is a theoretical thing, so we need to implement it first and see if everything is okay. Martha, do you want to add something else?
Okay. All these documents and this template will be sent to you, and it's easier you understand and to feel all can fill the document, but if feel free, please, if you have some doubt or you have some question, please tell us and we explain the point you need.
Malgorzata asked a question. I guess that she asked how we deal with different levels of students. I believe that each micro-credential should establish the target student, the target level. If it is for a micro-credential, that is my understanding of the whole process. But I believe that the proponents of the micro-credential must establish if it is for which kind of public, which kind of students, and which kind of background they should have. And that is also mentioned the prerequisites. So the student, the candidates should submit their CV, their certificates, and so we can assess if they qualify at when they apply. The board of admission should have the ability to determine if the student is eligible, if the candidate is eligible or not. I don't think that this is much different when you rank students that apply to master's or a PhD. They have a certain profile, and then in line with the profile, they will be admitted or not.
I'm sorry. We can define a generic criteria, or we can define a specific criteria. Suppose this micro-credential is the level of the master, like that, and we can define the criteria like the candidate need to be level 1, or in this case level 7. The graduate need to be graduated.
Yes, can I make it my question a bit precise, maybe? Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, Magdalena.
Hi. Thank you for answering. But my question was, I based on my experience with some students with a biological background, because I'm from University of Wrocław, and we have a new undergraduate, master degree profile for students from abroad. So they come and study, but they have no, some of them, they have no basic knowledge on particular topics. And the problem is that we have to be more precise when we, if we would like to have a specific type profile of student for this micro-credential. Yes.
This criteria is defined by the joint coordinator and the other partners. Each micro-credential it's unique. Okay, you could create a micro-credential and define these criteria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
only for that micro-credential.
Yeah. And I could probably add a little bit to what Magda said. So basically, when you are defining the micro-credential, you are writing in the syllabus, of course, and then when you are announcing the micro-credential, you are writing those prerequisites and requisites. So it means that student has to be, I don't know, he has to know this or that, he has to be taught for those courses and for those levels. If he's still participating, then of course it's basically it's of course on him to understand that he will have to participate in that micro-credentials, he will have to know that background information that is requested from him. And well, as he's paying the tuition fee, he must, well, agree with the rules here.
Okay, because normally we just put this in a very general way. So only during the studies, during the process of the study, we find out that they are not really well at some kind of topics, right? And sometimes the syllabus is not the document which we can follow, because we have to add some basic knowledge to, equip the students with the basics.
Yeah, but probably depends on the students that you receive, and well, most of them should be prepared for the micro-credentials regarding the rules they have according to the syllabus, to what you wrote there. And of course, it might happen that if most of the students are not very well prepared, then might be that you'll have to adjust a little bit. But of course, I think it's the minority, of course. I think
It should be a prerequisite.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I was about to tell, because when we determine if the student, the proponent of the micro-credential should establish what kind of background the student must have before applying or before being admitted. So I don't think that the submission of the submission of the micro-credential has that already in mind. The teachers determine if it is for a master student or for, or for should hold a bachelor or a master, or if it should be the student or the applicant should be a PhD student.
Okay, I see Felipe is raising his hand. Felipe?
Hi, Elena. Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me well. Just two questions. I was after the prior presentations. For me, it's quite important to understand that we are in a quite particular context, because when we talk about 2 to 59 ECTS, it's quite from a micro to a macro mega credential. Okay, for me it's already a problem. Okay, but that's a problem that I have to manage all alone in my corner. Okay, but thinking about the main presentations, it's really, for me, it's clear, and in part of my experience is that micro-credentials are quite interesting, being a flexible way to attain some type of aims that we can have in the training of postgraduate students and professional students, so on and so on. So I would like to know if eventually you think to add to these administrative documents some type of pedagogical model that will allow to have a real insurance of quality in what's going to be delivered, because we know we are inside a single institution. It's quite difficult sometimes to attain that. And when we talk about 9, for sure, for all of us that are working more or less with each other, we know that it's quite complicated to have some coherence sometimes on what we are doing. And when we talk about blended learning, blended hybrid learning, or distance learning, even more, because I don't know, I was looking at the syllabus template. I would like to suggest, if eventually you don't want to think about add some components, such as in Portuguese legislation, we have something like that for distance education, that is to ensure technical support and even academic support for these particular students, because if we do not we are not able to give this support to students, the dropout level is going to be quite huge. So just to say, if eventually you're thinking giving this balance between the administrative and also the administrative and technical and academic support to make sure that this initiative will work really, really well, And yeah, that would be all for now. But I think also that in the syllabus template, in the study plan, we could discuss a little bit about the difference between lectures and synchronous moments in distance education. It's quite a fuzzy thing to do.
Okay, thank you, Felipe. I think I could comment as the very first thing you mentioned that from 1 to 59, it's very difficult to understand. Well, yes, but basically those that are larger, they are, as Susan mentioned, they are stackable. So they are not like the single micro-credential for 59 ECTS credits, but basically there would be a couple of those as the modules, and they could be stacked one to each another.
Yeah.
And usually, as they said, the micro-credentials are varying between 3 to 10 or 15 SCTS. So I think in the Alliance, we won't have those much, the stackable ones, or at least for now, maybe later on, of course. As for the pedagogical model for quality assurance, I'm hoping that we'll have something together with that quality assurance system, which is built by Working Group 14, and we may add our insights because I provided with all the documents we have so far. They promised to come back to us. So hopefully very soon we'll have that module for the quality assurance because, of course, at least some guidelines for the Alliance are necessary. And as for the support that would be necessary for the students and so on, we were considering that there should be a contact information provided for next to each micro-credential that students could contact the academic person or the IT technician person, which might help for him with that micro-credential. So this information should appear in the course catalog and lifelong learning catalog, next to the syllabus, next to the basic information about the micro-credential and the tuition fee and all the other information. So of course, there should be people assigned in each university to support the students who are taking those micro-credentials. Yeah, so thank you. I think Lisa is raising her hand. Yes, please.
Hello, thank you. My name is Lisa and I'm from University of Minho. And my question is, if I'm planning on doing a joint micro-credential course with 2 or 3 universities, how do the 2 or 3 universities have to validate the course, or just one of the Arqus University can validate the course? Thank you.
Basically, they all should validate the course because, well, if they all are implementing the course, of course, if that course is considered as the joint micro-credential for all the universities, they all should do that. But that's the internal procedures according to each of the partners.
Okay, thank you.
There's a question in the chat as well from Veronica. How the micro-credential programs are accredited. So, for example, in the example of Maynooth, it was through the Irish system or through an Arqus system.
Yes, so thank you, Veronica. But for now, as you saw probably from my examples, we are not probably talking about the programs because the micro-credentials are not the full programs. They might be short learning programs that are constructed from few micro-credentials, but they are not full programs. They are only just the courses that are certifying students, so they are providing certificates. So basically, there's only internal approval regarding, well, according to each university rules needed. Okay, if no more questions for now, I could probably share my screen once again with all of you. With the very last slides, I guess, or last slide. Well, 1 minute. Yes. So there were the slides about the next steps and deadlines, and of course the place for the question and answer session as well. So Jessica, please.
So after today's presentation, we will be sending participants the slides that you've seen today. You'll also receive a form for feedback on the presentation on the whole day today. And for anyone needing a certificate from today, we'll send you information for that as well. So for those of you, keep in mind that you should have already received from Lena a document that shows the existing micro-credentials we have, or micro-credentials that have been proposed. Some of these are already set up and have partners. Some of them are still open for collaboration. So after the event today, we will send you a form if you are interested in submitting a proposal for a micro-credential. And the deadline for sending us back that form is going to be on May 16th. In our working group, we are going to be funding a total of 16 micro-credentials. That's one of our deliverables. And so once we've received the proposals at the end of May, beginning of June, we will be deciding on funding allocation. So which of those 16 micro-credentials we will be giving funding to, and each one will receive 2,000 euros. So we have an envelope of 32,000 that we've split into 16. In November 2025, this is when we would like to get the syllabi and the micro-credential agreements. So there's time to work on those and get those developed. And November is when we would like the micro-credentials to start actually being implemented. So this is so you have an idea of the timeline that we're working with in Working Group 6 for the further development of these micro-credentials. If you have already submitted a form for micro-credential proposal and you already have a partner, you don't need to resubmit that information. However, if you've submitted a proposal but you do not have a partner university, we will still need further information from you, because remember that the micro-credentials we're talking about here all need to be joint micro-credentials. And I'm just seeing if there's anything else to add. Obviously, this is information to return to me and Lena. I'll be giving you our email addresses on the next slide. And I think those are the main points I needed to remind everyone of. I think that's it for my information. So we still have some time for questions if there are any remaining questions today. Okay, there's some elaboration in the chat. So this goes back to the question that was that Estella and Magda were fielding. If you could take a look at what's in the chat. So it's a little bit more information on the question about students and prior knowledge.
Magdalena, your doubt is the difference between universities or university academy, okay? But at University of Minho, we have a lot of schools and institutes, but the institution of the Arqus, it's only University of Minho, okay? And we need to understand that if you do a joint micro-credential, your joint micro-credential is with University of Minho, okay? And if you have, if you want do a micro-credentials with somewhere to biological, and you don't know somewhere the biological of University of Minho, it's not a problem. You can contact me or Estella, or if you contact your person at university, your university, I suppose it's Danuta, I think you could contact her and her contact us. It's if you have some problem, you or someone else with find partners, please tell us. Tell us, me, Jessica, or Lena, I have an idea, but I don't have a partner. We could help you to find a partner for your idea and do a joint micro-credential, right?
Yes, Magda, thank you. But
and for the requirement, and to define the prerequisite or the you need to define that with your partner.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I could add here because, well, Magdalena had a slightly different question here, I think. So I understand that there might be an issue between the people with the different backgrounds coming to that micro-credential, but probably the only case and the only way how we could solve this is just to clearly state the information in the prerequisite that, for example, if student wants to study, I don't know, microbiology, he has to be finished these, and those courses. If he hasn't finished those courses, well, basically maybe you could even add the information, then he could take those courses. If we have additional micro-credentials, we could exactly offer him to take those courses at the very beginning, and then he could come back and listen to that course. That probably would be the only option here with such possibilities when students with very different backgrounds might appear. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That was my question, because the different background and sometimes different level in knowledge could be a problem. So we have to be very careful to put, prerequisition and the level of generality, right? To just define it quite precise, I guess.
Yes.
And I think that does go back a bit to what Magda was saying is good communication between the partner universities and Arqus to be clear on, especially between the academics who have a better idea of the subject knowledge at their individual universities, to kind of clarify what, the different courses and the backgrounds the students may have.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much.
We have
Any other questions?
Yes, we have another question.
Asking about the funding. So you mean the funding for those 16 micro-credentials, right? Yeah, so those who would like to apply, as we said, and as Jessica mentioned, we will send you the form to fill for that basically micro-credential you are offering, and you should just simply come back with this form to us, to me and Jessica. And in May, if I remember correctly, we should just check all those micro-credential proposals we have, and then the education board of Arqus will decide who will receive those money for the micro-credentials implementation. Yeah, so as Jessica just wrote, May 16th of May is the deadline for the proposal.
Do you have any limitations then to use the money? Sometimes you have limitations in how you can apply the money for equipment, production of content, I don't know.
Yeah, so basically as we received this funding from the Innovations Fund of Arqus, and the funding is provided as a lump sum, the professors might decide on themselves how they will use it. Maybe they will use that for the equipment, maybe they need the funding, I don't know, for additional people to hire or something like that. It's up to them.
Just guys, team up and prepare applications to micro-credentials.
Yeah. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I guess it's time for us to wrap up for today.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was really good to see so many people participating. We are hoping to receive very much of the proposals from your side. Yeah, so we'll wait for that. And of course, we'll come back with all the documents and all the information to you next week, I think. Yeah.